Welcome back. Peer-to-peer lending is a booming sector in Indonesia's rapidly growing fintech industry, representing 43% of the country's fintech companies, according to a paper by the Asian Development Bank Institute released earlier this month. Peer-to-peer lending fintech helps people who have not been touched by banks, especially for small and medium enterprises. Indonesia's small and medium enterprises, or SMEs, sector currently overcome a host of tough new challenges, include funding. To get know more on how P2P lending fintech can help SME to grow, we have our reporter Clara Antawijaya to cover it for you.
Yes, Wiki Adrian. So financial technology in Indonesia is really rapidly growing and very popular among people in Indonesia because of its speed and ease. And of course, when economic law just came out, when supply meets demand, and therefore financial technology in Indonesia, mostly peer-to-peer lending, came out to distribute funds to the people. And of course, fintech existence in Indonesia is expected to bring financial inclusions. And moreover, they can reach people who doesn't use bank, and especially for the small medium enterprises.
Indonesia's digital economy is expected to almost double in value last year to $101 billion by 2024. Based on data from a coordinating Minister of Economy, peer-to-peer lending recorded as the highest sector compared to another sector in the industry. Individual credit distributions grew, peer-to-peer lending grew 40%, and payment sector grew 34%, which hold the second positions, and market data analysis for 9%, and crowdfunding 4%, and wealth management for 4%. One of the main concerns when it comes to peer-to-peer lending is the level of non-performing loan. The quality of credit distribution by peer-to-peer lending in Indonesia had been improving. By April 2019, for example, non-performing credit ratio only reached 1.63%. The number is so much lower compared to the non-performing credit ratio at February 2019 that reached 3.18%. And how about the growth of credit distribution through fintech inside and outside Java Island? Credit distributions through peer-to-peer lending up to June 2019 accumulatively reached 44.81 trillion rupiah. The lending value grew by 487.15%, or 5 times higher compared to June 2018 lending, as much as 7.63 trillion rupiah.
Combining financial know-how with technology, and of course fintech has reshaped the SMEs lending, and of course they are approving more business to more capital, and of course they open opportunity for SMEs to access the fund for they need. And of course right now, to get know more about that, now luckily we have the COO and co-founder from Modalku, which is Indonesia's peer-to-peer lender for small medium enterprises. Please welcome Pak Iwan.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for the time. Thank you.
Thanks for your time today. So,
likewise.
First of all, the question that I would like to ask is maybe about the trend. So, what is actually the trend of peer-to-peer lender in Indonesia right now?
So, we see that over the last 3 or 4 years or so, there's been a boom of the peer-to-peer lending space in Indonesia. From what was no players in 2015 to what is like 130 players according to OJK in this year alone, right? So it's been a big trend going upwards, and these are a mix of players who focus on SME financing, those who focus on consumer financing, and also on cash loans, right? So it's been a booming trend. I think this year alone we saw the majority, we've seen the biggest boom so far. So we think the trend will continue to be quite strong.
A good opportunity.
A good opportunity for sure.
All right. For the second question, we'll be like, can you explain for crowdfunding? Maybe people were curious about this. Maybe this is a new business in Indonesia. Can you explain crowdfunding itself?
So the logic of crowdfunding is that people who are underserved by financial institutions today can receive an alternative source of financing, right, from people who are called investors, right? And these are investors, could be majority retail, or it could be institutions, right, who put money, right, into loans in exchange for a return.
But for you as a lender, where do you get the source of fund actually?
So the source of fund would come from, so on our platform, we're able to register not only just SMEs who borrow, but also investors who want to lend out money. So in short, these funds come from retail institutions who are investing on our online platform.
All right, moving on to the third question.
Sure.
Can you tell us a bit about the background of Modalco?
So Modalco was started in early 2016 in Indonesia. It's now operating in Indonesia, Singapore, and also Malaysia. It was started originally by two Harvard Business School graduates, Kelvin and Reynolds, and then later on myself as well, as a Modalco co-founder as well. And we focus on SME financing in Southeast Asia. So far, over the last 4 years or so, we've disbursed about 9.7 trillion rupiah in SME financing across the region. And we've received support and backing from global investors like Sequoia and SoftBank and so forth, so that we can support even more SMEs in the future to receive the financing which they need.
So, Iwan, there's a statement from Fintech associations that merely say that 50% of SMEs in Indonesia have a chance to fail, in a period of only 5 years. How can you mitigate such a risk as a peer-to-peer lender?
Right. So I think this risk of SME failure is a risk that all financial institutions who lend to SMEs face, right? Not just us, but also banks and multi-finance companies who do the same thing. And each of us will have our own risk mitigation strategies to mitigate how do you ensure that loans don't go default, right? Yeah. So for banks, it could be in the form of collateral, right? That they give out. It could be in the form of home collateral or fixed asset and so forth. For us, we rely more on things like data, right? As well as a good design of products, so that there's a clear purpose of funds and also a clear payment source. For example, right? So we work with e-commerce platforms. We work with them to provide financing for e-commerce merchants. And with these collaborations, what we do is that we work with them to use the data of these merchants, for example, sales data and so forth, to understand the behavior and history of this merchant. So in a way, we rely on data, we rely on good product design with clear use of funds and clear payment source to mitigate the risk of SME failing and not paying us.
What do you think about the chance of fintech in Indonesia later on?
So I think fintech, as we're in the middle of this fintech growth and wave for the last few years, and we saw in the news in the last few weeks that we have a new unicorn in fintech called OVO, right? Sure. We all know about that. So my opinion is that as long as there is underserved financing needs, right, and as long as there's growth in our technology platforms, and the use and education of these usage or of these platforms, then the growth of fintech will continue, right? So far, I think the support from our regulators, OJK and Bank Indonesia has been very good so far, and that's why the industry can thrive. They're able to balance between what is good for the industry and what is good for the consumers, right? And the role of BI and OJK are extremely important. So we continue to work with them to improve our regulations, to onboard more fintech companies, and do better. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for your time, sir.
Yeah. Thank you for your time.
That.
Thank you for your time as well. Yeah. Thank you.
So it is clear that financial technology in Indonesia, mostly about peer-to-peer lending, is in a very young stage. But however, with the right treatment, focus and support for the government and also other financial institutions, probably fintech can be the solutions for small medium enterprises lending. And of course, Indonesia will probably have a chance to be the strongest player in the Southeast Asia. I'm Clara Antawijaya. Go back to studio with Vicky Adrian.
Thank you, Clara Antawijaya, for your comprehensive report. And stay tuned on Market Headlines because we'll be right back after the break.